Mom sells her blind daughter to a millionaire, and on the first night he does something that leaves her shocked. Before the story begins, comment below which city you're watching this video from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Enjoy the story, everyone. The gentle patter of rain against the window pane had become Alison Parker's way of seeing the world. At 23, she'd spent the last 8 years living in perpetual darkness after losing her sight at 15. Her fingers traced the worn fabric of her small suitcase as her mother's voice cut through the quiet apartment they shared in the outskirts of Ashford Valley. "You should be grateful, Allie," Diane said, her voice carrying that familiar edge that always made Alison's shoulders tense. "This job is perfect for someone like you. The old man needs company and basic care. The pay is exceptional." Alison nodded, knowing that disagreeing would only invite her mother's bitter remarks about being a burden. She'd learned early in childhood that obedience was the path of least resistance, though it never earned her the affection she craved. "Is there a staff at the house?" Alison asked, her voice soft. Diane's pause was brief but telling. "Not many, it's a private situation, but that's why they're paying so well." The car ride to the edge of Ashford Valley was silent. Alison could feel they were climbing, the vehicle winding up what must be one of the mountain roads leading to the estates that dotted the hills surrounding the valley. The air grew cooler and crisper as they ascended. When they arrived, the crunch of gravel beneath her feet and the open expanse of sound told Alison they were somewhere spacious and isolated. A chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the Vermont autumn. "Mrs. Parker," a deep male voice greeted them, not elderly or frail as Alison had expected. "Mr. Blackwood," her mother responded with uncharacteristic deference. "As promised. My daughter Alison is here for the position." Alison extended her hand politely, but confusion was setting in. The man who took it had strong, steady hands, young, perhaps in his 40s, most certainly not the elderly person she'd been told needed care. "I wasn't aware she was..." His voice trailed off. "Blind?" Alison supplied, her head tilting slightly. "Is that going to be a problem for your father, Mr. Blackwood?" Another telling silence fell before he spoke again. "There's been a misunderstanding. I'm Nathan Blackwood, there is no father. I live alone." Alison's heart began to race as the pieces fell into place. This wasn't a caregiving job. She wasn't even sure what this was. The transaction happened quickly after that. Hushed voices, the rustle of paper, her mother's hand guiding her to sign something she couldn't see. Something Diane insisted was just employment paperwork. Then came the unmistakable sound of counting money. "Mom?" Alison's voice wavered. "Everything's taken care of," Diane said briskly. "Mr. Blackwood will explain everything. I've got to get back to town before dark." Before Alison could protest, she heard her mother's retreating footsteps, the car door slamming, the engine starting. The vehicle that had brought her here was leaving, without her. Panic seized her chest. "So your mother didn't tell you, did she?" Nathan's voice had softened, tinged with what sounded like genuine surprise and perhaps a hint of regret. "Tell me what?" Alison clutched her cane tighter, her knuckles whitening. "She arranged for you to stay here, permanently, as company." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implications that made Alison's skin crawl. "She sold me." The words escaped as a whisper, but they echoed in the vast silence of the property. Nathan didn't deny it. $500,000. She said you were skilled at conversation, that you could bring some life back into this house. Alison stood frozen, the rain beginning to fall again around them, her world crumbling for the second time in her young life. The mansion was silent, except for the occasional creak of century-old wood and Alison's careful footsteps as she navigated her new prison. 3 days had passed since her mother had left her here, sold to a stranger like property. Nathan barely spoke, appearing only at mealtimes before disappearing into his study, a daily ritual of awkward silence. Alison's room was spacious but cold, both in temperature and spirit. She'd spent hours memorizing every inch, counting steps between furniture, learning the subtle differences in the floor's texture. It was her way of regaining control when everything else had been taken from her. "You're free to explore the house," Nathan had told her the first night, his voice distant. "There are no staff, just us. Just us." The thought had terrified her initially. Now, on the 4th morning, it simply fueled her determination. She would not be a passive captive in this bizarre arrangement. With her cane tapping quietly against the hardwood floors, Alison ventured beyond her wing of the mansion. The layout was becoming clearer in her mind. A massive two-story structure with east and west wings, dozens of unused rooms gathering dust. A monument to emptiness. As she moved deeper into the house, an unexpected sound caught her attention. A different resonance when her cane struck the floor. Following this acoustic anomaly, she discovered a room where the floor seemed to absorb sound differently. Running her hand along the wall, she found a light switch that clicked uselessly. She'd stopped turning on lights years ago. But what her fingers discovered next made her breath catch. The smooth, polished surface of a grand piano. Her fingers glided reverently across its closed lid. It was my mother's. Alison startled at Nathan's voice behind her. He had a way of moving silently through the house, like a ghost haunting his own home. "Does it still work?" she asked, her first unprompted question since arriving. "I wouldn't know, no one's played it in 15 years. Something in his voice, a hollowness that matched the house itself, gave Alison courage. She found the bench, positioned herself and lifted the fallboard. The ivory keys felt cool beneath her fingertips as she pressed gently, coaxing a tentative note from the sleeping instrument. It was slightly out of tune, but still playable. Alison closed her eyes, a reflex from her seeing days, and began to play the piece she'd practiced obsessively before the accident, Debussy's Clair de Lune. The notes flowed hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence as muscle memory awakened. The music filled the cavernous room, transforming the cold mansion with its gentle, melancholic beauty. Alison lost herself in the piece, her body swaying slightly with the emotional crescendos. When the final notes faded into silence, she realized Nathan was still there. His breathing had changed. "Where did you learn to play like that?" His voice was closer now, tinged with something new, wonder perhaps. "Before I lost my sight, I had lessons for years." Alison's fingers remained on the keys. "Music was the only thing that made sense afterward, until my mother sold the piano to pay bills. At least, that's what she told me." "What happened?" "To your sight?" The question was abrupt but not unkind. Alison stiffened. "An accident after I ran away from home." "Why did you run?" Her hands slipped from the keys, falling into her lap. "My mother had found me another job, with one of her boyfriend's friends. It wasn't the first time." The silence between them gained weight, understanding dawning in the stillness. "I'm not what your mother sold me as, Mr. Blackwood," Alison finally said. "I won't be anyone's possession or plaything. Not again." Nathan moved to the window, the sound of his expensive shoes distinct on the hardwood floor. That's not why you're here." "Then why am I here? Why would anyone pay $500,000 for a blind companion they've never met?" His pause was so long that Alison thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice was raw with a pain that matched her own. "Silence is its own kind of torture when you're alone with your thoughts too long. I needed someone, a presence, a voice, something to prove I still exist in this world." Alison's hands found the piano keys again, pressing a single clear note that hung between them like a question. "And did you think buying a person was the answer?" "I didn't know what else to do." Weeks passed, and the strange arrangement began to evolve. The piano became Alison's sanctuary, her music filling the mansion at different hours. Nathan would appear silently, listening without interrupting. Sometimes he'd leave books in Braille beside the piano, classics she'd mentioned once in passing, small gestures that spoke of attention rather than possession. Their conversations grew longer, revealing glimpses of the wounds they both carried. Nathan spoke of his company, a tech firm he'd built from nothing, then handed over to others to manage when the world became too much. He never mentioned why he'd retreated from life until one evening when the doorbell shattered their fragile peace. "Nathan!" A woman's voice echoed through the foyer, sharp as breaking glass. "I know you're hiding in here." Alison, halfway down the stairs, froze as heels clicked aggressively across marble. "Victoria." Nathan's voice was tight. "You weren't invited. Since when do I need an invitation?" The woman laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "The board meeting was today. You missed it." "Again." "I sent my proxy votes, as always." "And who's this?" Victoria's voice shifted, focusing on Alison. "I'm Alison Parker." She descended the remaining stairs with measured confidence, extending her hand in the direction of the voice. Victoria ignored the gesture. The new housekeeper? About time this place got cleaned up. She's a guest, Nathan said firmly. A guest? Victoria's voice dripped with suspicion. For 3 weeks? Elliot at the bank mentioned a large withdrawal, very large. What exactly did you buy this time, Nathan? The tension in the room thickened. Alison felt Nathan move protectively closer to her. That's none of your business, Vicky. We're not together anymore. Haven't been for 2 years. And yet I still own 40% of your company, Victoria countered, which makes your mental stability very much my business. Later that night, after Victoria's dramatic exit, Nathan found Alison in the piano room. I'm sorry about that. Alison's fingers paused above the keys. She's the reason, isn't she? Why you're hiding here? Nathan sank onto the bench beside her. 2 years ago, I thought we would get married. Then I discovered she'd been manipulating company finances, embezzling funds, using me. When I confronted her, she threatened to tell everyone I was unstable, unfit to lead. The board would have believed her. So you retreated. I gave her what she wanted, control of day-to-day operations, and I disappeared. It seemed easier than fighting. Alison's fingers found a minor chord, letting it resonate. And then you bought yourself a companion. The following day, Victoria returned unexpectedly. Alison was alone in the kitchen when she heard those same heels on marble. Let's not pretend, Victoria said without preamble. I know exactly what you are and why you're here. Nathan showed me the contract. Alison set down her mug carefully. Whatever you think you know. I know he paid your mother a fortune for you. What I don't understand is why. You're blind. Victoria circled her like a predator. Unless that's part of the appeal. There is no appeal, Alison said evenly. It's not what you think. Really? Because I saw you leave the property yesterday, walking down the mountain path alone. For someone supposedly helpless and dependent, you seem quite capable. Alison's heart raced. She had indeed been exploring the grounds, using her cane and the sounds of nature to guide her. It was her first taste of independence in years. I'm willing to offer you money, Victoria continued, more than whatever arrangement you have. All you need to do is disappear. Or I could make your arrangement very public. Imagine the scandal. Wealthy recluse purchases disabled woman as companion. That would hurt Nathan more than me, Alison countered. Exactly. Victoria's smile was audible in her voice. So what will it be? When Nathan returned from his rare trip to town, he found Alison packing. You're leaving. It wasn't a question. I have to. Alison folded a sweater with practiced precision. Victoria made it clear what happens if I stay. Whatever she offered you, this isn't about money, Nathan. Alison turned toward his voice. It's about finding my own way. I can't keep being someone's property or project or responsibility. I need to know who I am without my mother's shadow, without your protection. Where will you go? There's a women's shelter in town. I called them today. Nathan was silent for a long moment. The contract. Your mother sold something that was never hers to sell, Alison finished firmly. My life belongs to me. It's time I started living it. The Ashford Valley Women's Center became Alison's sanctuary for 3 months. There she met Michael Thompson, a psychologist who specialized in trauma recovery. Unlike others who spoke to her with careful pity, Michael addressed her as an equal, challenging her to confront the years of manipulation and abuse. Your mother conditioned you to believe you were helpless, Michael explained during one session. But blindness didn't make you dependent. Her psychological control did. Through these conversations, Alison began to untangle her identity from the labels others had assigned her. She joined a support group, learned to navigate with greater independence, and even began teaching piano to other residents. Meanwhile, Nathan faced his own reckoning. Victoria's threats had awakened something in him, not fear, but resolve. He called a board meeting for the first time in 2 years and revealed evidence of Victoria's financial misconduct he'd been gathering silently all along. You thought I retreated out of weakness, he told her, as security escorted her from the building. I was just waiting until I had everything I needed. On a crisp spring morning, Alison returned to the mansion, not as someone purchased, but as someone choosing her path. Nathan opened the door before she could knock. You knew I was coming, she said, smiling slightly. I heard the taxi on the gravel, he admitted. I've gotten better at listening. Inside, the house had changed. Rooms once shrouded in darkness now filled with natural light. The piano had been tuned, but the most significant change awaited in Nathan's study. "I have a proposal," he said as they sat across from each other. "Not the kind you're thinking," he added quickly, hearing her sharp intake of breath. "A business proposal." He slid a document across the desk, then remembered and began to read it aloud. It outlined the creation of the Aurora Project, a foundation dedicated to supporting survivors of abuse and trafficking with a focus on helping them build independent lives. "This house has enough space for at least 20 residents," Nathan explained. "With appropriate staff, it could become a transition center, offering safety, skills training, therapy." "Why Aurora?" Allison asked, her voice quiet with emotion. "The dawn after darkness." Nathan's voice softened. "It was your idea, really. You once said that losing your sight taught you to find light in different ways." Allison's fingers traced the edge of the desk thoughtfully. "And the house? Your sanctuary? Will be transferred to the Foundation's ownership. I've already spoken with lawyers." Before Allison could respond, Nathan's phone rang, his lawyer confirming that Victoria had been formally charged with embezzlement and removed from the company board. As he hung up, a different weight seemed to lift from his shoulders. "There's something else," Nathan said. "Something about your father." Allison's breath caught. "My mother always said he died before I was born." She lied. "I hired investigators. They found Thomas Parker living just 2 hours from here. He's been looking for you for years." The reunion with her father came 2 weeks later. Thomas Parker's hands trembled as they held hers, his voice breaking as he explained how Diane had threatened and ultimately disappeared with their daughter when Allison was just 3. "I never stopped searching," he told her, tears evident in his voice. "When your mother moved, she changed your names. By the time I found a lead, years had passed, and she told the courts I'd abandoned you." As spring turned to summer, the Aurora Project began to take shape. The mansion's rooms transformed into comfortable living spaces, therapy offices, and classrooms. The piano room became a music therapy center, where Allison taught residents to express through notes what they couldn't yet speak in words. One evening, as sunset painted the sky with colors Allison could only remember, she and Nathan sat on the terrace overlooking the valley. "Someone asked me today if we were together," Allison said, amusement in her voice. "What did you tell them?" Nathan asked carefully. "That we're something more complicated. Partners in healing, maybe." Her hand found his on the armrest between them. Two people who found their way out of darkness together. Nathan turned his hand to hold hers. "Is that enough?" Allison smiled. "It's a beginning, real beginnings, not purchased ones." In the months that followed, the Aurora Project welcomed its first residents, women who, like Allison, were learning to reclaim their stories and write new endings. The mansion that had once been a monument to isolation became a beacon of community and hope. And in quiet moments, when the house settled into nighttime silence, music could still be heard floating from the piano room, sometimes played by Allison alone, sometimes joined by Nathan, who was slowly learning to play. Their duets, imperfect but sincere, echoed through hallways once empty, now filled with the sounds of healing and new life. Thank you for joining us on Allison and Nathan's journey from darkness to dawn. If this story of healing and second chances touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on this video. It helps us continue sharing stories that matter. Every day we bring new emotional journeys to life, so feel free to explore our channel and discover your next favorite story. What did you think about Allison's transformation and the creation of the Aurora Project? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you tomorrow with another unforgettable tale of resilience and hope.